We're diving straight into a massive, rapidly shifting geopolitical puzzle currently unfolding in the Middle East. If you've been tracking the US-Iran situation, you know we are way past standard political posturing. We're talking fundamental shifts in military tactics, massive economic maneuvering, and some seriously intense psychological warfare. I am super excited to walk you through this, because once you see how all these pieces fit together, from a single port investment to the fate of global trade, everything just clicks. So let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with India, Chabahar, and US pressure, then move to the targeting of civilian infrastructure. After that, we'll hit the battle for Hormuz, global economic shocks, and wrap up with information warfare and politics.
All right, part 1, India, Chabahar, and US pressure.
So we're starting with a super specific, yet massive geopolitical anchor. The US essentially strong-armed India into ditching its massive investments in Iran's Chabahar Port, and they weren't exactly subtle about it. The US Defense Secretary literally tweeted a photo of a radar tower at the port, a tower built with Indian money. The message here? It's crystal clear. The US is basically saying they won't hesitate to pressure their own allies and blow up a partner's economic investment if it serves their broader goal of isolating Iran. It's a bold move, showing they are fully willing to target economic assets, no matter whose wallet takes the hit.
Which leads us to part 2, targeting civilian infrastructure.
This willingness to go after economic targets, it actually represents a huge, calculated shift in America's military playbook. Think back to the spring, during the March and April exchanges. The US was playing it pretty safe. When Iran hit oil depots in Tehran, the US actually warned Israel not to strike civilian infrastructure, basically saying, we need to leave them the ability to recover post-war. Well, fast forward to today, and that caution is totally gone. The current strategy involves actively bombing civilian and logistical infrastructure right along Iran's southern coast, from Abadan all the way to Chabahar. The goal isn't about ensuring post-war recovery anymore. It's about systematically slicing off Iran's southern coast from the rest of the mainland.
And you can see exactly how this isolation is playing out on the ground. Just look at Bandar Khamir. The US took out 7 bridges there, 6 of which connected the port directly to Bandar Abbas. Bam! Just like that, coastal residents are physically cut off. It actually mirrors what Israel did in Lebanon, systematically destroying bridges over the Litani River. Then you have Bandar Abbas itself. They aren't just going after military bases, they're hitting the rail lines and stations. In a massive country like Iran, snapping that rail network severs central cities like Shiraz from the ports. And over in the Sistan and Baluchistan region, they're bombing local airports used for emergency transit. The whole objective is to bring daily life to a grinding halt and literally amputate that coastal strip from the mainland.
Moving on to part 3, the battle for Hormuz. Okay, so we've covered the how, the blowing up of bridges and rails, but what's the why? Well, the ultimate prize here is the Strait of Hormuz. Everything happening on that southern coast is about controlling this one specific stretch of water. Robert Pei from the University of Chicago recently pointed out in the New York Times that controlling Hormuz basically elevates Iran to a 4th pillar of global power. I mean, sure, Iran can't match the US, China, or Russia in pure military or economic strength, but honestly, it doesn't even matter. If they control the flow of global oil and gas through that strait, they get unmatched strategic leverage. It puts them right up there on equal footing. The US knows if Iran locks down Hormuz, the entire diplomatic game changes. So this bombing campaign, it's a direct effort to weaken Iran exactly where they control that crucial choke point.
So how is Iran pushing back? It's actually fascinating because their retaliation has been incredibly measured and calculated. They aren't just lashing out wildly. Instead, they're trying to blind the US. They're going after US satellite and radar systems to knock out American command and control networks. On top of that, they're hitting very specific logistical hubs, like the Duqm port in Oman. Now, this port is a solid 500 kilometers away from Hormuz, but it's super important for servicing the US Navy. It's a very deliberate strategy. Degrade American operational capabilities, but avoid crossing the line into a full-blown regional war.
Let's zoom out for part 4, global trade and economic shocks.
We need to look at how this is rippling through the entire global economy. Right now, economists are massively divided on the true impact of this conflict. On one hand, you had these dire predictions of an August shock, basically warnings that messing with oil through Hormuz would absolutely devastate global markets. But then you look at the reality. Back in the spring, people were terrified oil would shoot up to $200 a barrel, but it didn't happen. The markets actually absorbed the shortages and price hikes way better than anyone expected. So it leaves us with this massive question. Has the market already priced in the worst of it? Or is the real economic devastation, like crazy inflation at the grocery store or a massive spike at the gas pump, still lurking right around the corner?
To give you an idea of the sheer scale of this disruption, think about this. India literally had to issue warnings to 300,000 of its maritime workers. 300,000! Because ports and coastal infrastructure are being targeted so heavily, the Indian government had to step in and tell shipping companies not to send their sailors into this conflict zone. The physical danger to global shipping personnel out there is incredibly real and immediate.
And it's not just the direct players getting hit. The collateral damage to neighboring nations is wild. Take Kuwait, for example. There was a recent attack that hit a desalination plant there. Why is that a big deal? Because that single plant provides 90% of the entire country's water supply. 90%. It really just highlights how incredibly fragile the whole Gulf region is right now. One targeted strike, or even just one bad miscalculation, and you instantly threaten the basic survival resources of a neighboring country.
And finally, Part 5, Information Warfare and Politics.
So, stepping away from the physical bombings for a second, there's this intense, parallel psychological battle going on. Both sides are playing hardball here. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, actually made a direct public appeal to the people of Jordan, essentially urging them to rise up and kick the U.S. military out of their country. And what's crazy is that this is the exact same playbook the U.S. used back in the spring when they were trying to get the Iranian public to rebel against their leadership. Beyond just words, the IRGC is also threatening to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in the Red Sea to squeeze the global economy even tighter. Plus, they're going after strategic joint ventures, like targeting an Iraqi gas company just because it has ties to an American corporation. It is a full-on, multi-front psychological pressure campaign.
And this information warfare, it is spilling right over into domestic U.S. politics. According to a report by DropSite, Iran is trying to use private communications to stir up chaos within the American political camp. The claim from Iran is that U.S. negotiators Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner used insider info from back-channel talks in Switzerland to make market trades, supposedly netting a crazy $9 billion profit. And here's where the leverage comes in. Iran is reportedly demanding a $4.5 billion cut to keep quiet, threatening to leak private messages sent to vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance if they don't get paid. Now, J.D. Vance has come out swinging against this. He called the claims completely bogus, said he never even received those messages, and strongly defended Kushner and Witkoff as trusted guys who have worked hard for peace in the region. But regardless of whether these claims are true or not, it just shows you how financial leverage and the threat of targeted leaks are literally being weaponized in real time.
Which brings us to the big overarching question we have to ask ourselves as we wrap up this explainer. The Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait have shown a lot of restraint so far, but pressure inside Iran for a massive, unrestrained retaliation is definitely building. So what happens next? Will this stay a calculated war of psychological attrition and isolated bridge bombings? Or is it only a matter of time before an attack spills over into neighboring Gulf ports, completely shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, and triggers a massive global economic and military crisis? The geopolitical tectonic plates are shifting fast, guys, and the tipping point might be a lot closer than we think.